Ooh, look at that. We are now live. Welcome to the eLearning Community office hours with Chris and Laddick. I feel like we need some Mr. Rogers background music that we have to put on this thing for
Like,
whatever.
I think we can do that. We're not even exploring.
I'm sure we can. Hello
Uh,
to everybody. Here, if you are listening to this live, welcome. If you are listening to this on the recording, you're also welcome as well. Chris and I work for a company called Open LMS. You may also know us from the website LMS Pulse. And did I get it right? Over here, the eLearn Success Series, formerly known as the eLearn Success Summit. But the eLearn Success Series is happening this year. It's going to be 4 sessions instead of one big event. We're having 4 different events across the year 2022. Our first session, which is going to be focused on instructional design or designing effective and engaging courses and classes and essentially learning materials for the online experience or even the blended experience. That one is happening on February 23rd, and we have just a bunch of really great speakers that are lined up. I mean, I've actually started to get feedback on some of the speakers that we published out there, and it's pretty cool. Michelle Ockers, Jane Bozeman, Mark Pari.
Bozart?
Say again?
Jane Bozart?
Jane Bozarth. Sorry, totally just messed that up. Sorry, Jane. I apologize. I put two people's.
Looking at you like.
I put two people's put her name together with somebody else's name. Hitachi Koitan from Priceline, Justin Reinert from Amobi. Pretty excited. Ted Karan from Autodesk, and our very own Phil Miller will be talking as well. So a little promo to start us out here. But the reason why Chris and I are here today is because we like to hold these office hours once a week. It's a way for us to reach out to the community and just make our sales available. So if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have an observation, a success, a challenge, anything that you'd like to talk about in the eLearning universe, join us. You can put a comment in Facebook, you can put a comment in YouTube, you can put a comment in LinkedIn, and we'll see them. And of course, if you're watching the recording, you can do that as well. And Chris and I do monitor those, and so we'll respond to you then. But today, what do we want to talk about today, Chris? We want to talk about our latest podcast that we published with Thomas Kroner and Mike Churchward of the Moodle Users Association. We're also going to talk about the future of e-learning because we had a hot seat earlier this week as well with Herman, who is Rojas, who is one of our colleagues at Open LMS. And I'm interested to see what this is, the magic of embeds and the other eLearn hacks. So I'll be interested to talk about that. But I've talked a lot, so why don't you kick us off? What did you think about the podcast this week with Thomas and Mike? For me, when I recorded it with Mike and Thomas, the conversation just ended. It went somewhere where I didn't expect it to, but it just ended up becoming really fascinating at the end. My biggest takeaway or aha was Mike talking about, I believe it's either his son or someone he's related to. I believe it's his son who's doing some coding for the association or whatnot, and the power of being able to put to, as a young professional, coding something for Moodle and then getting it accepted into the code, right? You get it, you put it up to GitHub, and then if it's accepted into the final core or something like that, you literally have just created something that is going to be used by millions and millions of people. And that's pretty amazing. Like, that was a really cool, aha moment for me during the conversation. What did you take away?
It makes me wonder if the community that we're trying to build is going to be passed on generations. Sounds funny a little bit, but that's kind of what Moodle is doing already. I honestly don't know of any other case like Mike's, but I'm sure there must be more than one. Especially today, before the computer science, being a programmer wasn't that much of it wasn't so popular as it is today. So there's even more reason, more incentives for people to join the career to become a programmer. So I guess there's more people, young people, who see development, and maybe in particular e-learning development as a career. And many of them will be influenced by their parents. Moodle is 20 years old, meaning a lot of people who joined maybe when they were early in their careers that already have families with young kids who are either already into it or about to be. So it's really interesting. But that was just like the scratch of the surface of everything that you touched on. There's a couple of episodes where you see, there should be more of this. Like you touch on many things, and each one deserves like more.
Yes, yeah, more in depth. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But what I was trying to focus on this week for the newsletter, for example, was on the importance of the community. And since we are sort of in the e-learning design season because of our design session, I'm wondering what kind of relationship or what kind of influence can have an e-learning design in terms of a community. Like if you're designing a learning experience, what would be the community element of that experience? And not just because it's fun or because it sounds nice, but because I think there's also an element of impact. There's actual evidence that when there is a community behind a learning experience, the outcomes are much greater.
I mean, does this tie in? This ties into everything that we've been talking about, peer-to-peer learning, right? Where I know we've talked about it here in the office hours a couple of times, but then also we've had podcasts about it. We've also had guests on the eLearning Success Summit about it, where if you're engaging with colleagues or engaging with classmates or engaging with a cohort of some kind, it not only ups the engagement, but the retention and just sort of the overall satisfaction with the learning moment. Is that what you're kind of getting at, or some other community aspect?
Yeah, no, I mean that the community. It's funny because I think Moodle is a community by itself, and of course it is an e-learning platform. And you do see that in the basis, in development of Moodle, these peer-based relationships, what they call a constructionist philosophy of learning, is very prevalent, at least at the onset. But I don't know of initiatives that are actually taking advantage of the community for educational purposes. So I think they're mostly in parallel, but they're still, each of them are very worth looking into. And I think it was clear for you, for the founder of LMS Pulse Moodle News, that the Moodle Users Association in particular was a very great example of how to build a stable community that has impact on, they have this process where they can actually focus on a goal and move it forward and actually influence a bigger conversation, which is the Moodle roadmap. The features, the things that you want to see in Moodle. It's clear how the Moodle Users Association, which isn't really that big and it doesn't really have that much resources compared to other things, but it can still have a really clear role into what Moodle looks like.
And big is relative too. I think, on the podcast, one of the things that either Thomas or Mike pointed out, I can't remember which, but some of the institutional members of the MUA are fairly large universities and whatnot. And so, these are, these universities can kind of put the voice of hundreds of professors or thousands of professors sometimes, into what do they want. And maybe, all of those professors or teachers or whatever are not necessarily directly contributing, but if you are someone who is managing that learning, that LMS, or you're the administrator of that LMS, you certainly have your finger on the pulse of the needs and the wants for that institution, right? So that's a fairly large. So one voice is amplifying, sort of the needs of many. So that's kind of great. But I do like what you're saying as well about how the association helps guide. This is one of the things about open source. How do you help guide where the project is going? And it creates focus. It creates a really, a known process for feature development, bug fixes, those kinds of things, especially feature development. And I believe, I want to just say so the founder of Moodle News and LMS Pulse really, Joseph Thibault. I believe that one of his projects was one of the first picks, which was the
recycle bin.
Recycle bin, yeah. Which,
yeah,
I gotta say, that's pretty cool. That's pretty sweet, right? Like I take zero credit, and I have nothing to do with that other than, you know, we've helped keep the spirit alive. But that's a pretty cool feeling to know that, you know, you are a voice in that community, and then that voice is then sort of, not realized. What's the word I'm looking for? It's consummated, you know, by the, you know, hey, yeah, we're listening to you. We're going to put that recycle bin in there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and well, you mentioned that many cases are these large institutions, users of Moodle, a lot of Europe presence there that funds the memberships. And so people like Thomas, who is the chairman, which is an honorary position, like MOA doesn't pay him to be the chairman, but he sees it as part of his job, as part of his personal mission to be there, to lead. But there's also cases like Joe and many others who can join individually, and they get the same kind of attention and importance. And one thing that Mike mentioned that I think is really cool is how it's a process of coordination. Like whenever they decide, so what are we going to build? What are we going to fund for future Moodle development? It hasn't ever become like a contest or like a match, but there's really a process where everyone, like internally, they try to answer: is my idea or is everybody's idea? Among these, which is the most useful or the most valuable overall? And honestly, I don't know what guarantees that that's the case and what could change it when some evil character joins. I don't know, but the fact that it's working so far, I think, is really cool. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, it's been around for quite a while now. I can't remember the year that it started, but
it's 6 years.
Yeah, it's like 5 or 6 years, and it's going, and it's I mean, it's past the point of, you know, is this going to work? Like, it definitely works. I guess maybe I'm interested to see what the iterations are, and that's something that Thomas, and just kind of tie this section of our conversation in a bow. You know, where they end with is, you know, Thomas definitely, as the chairman, definitely has a vision for how can this become more impactful? How can the MUA be better refined, and the process refined to not only be more efficient, but then have more impact as well. Very Swiss of him. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Wow, I've never seen it like that. But
I say that in the most loving and you know, approving fashion. Just for everybody, you know, if you're listening right now, just a reminder: you're listening to me. My name is Laddick, and this is Chris. We both work for an organization called Open LMS. I want to invite you to come join us this year. Our eLearning Success Summit has been renamed. We're evolving it to the eLearn Success Series. It's a series of 4 events that are happening, one each quarter over 2022. And our first session is coming up on February 23rd. All of the tickets are free. And, you know, the design session, you're going to be able to hear some really cool speakers from, you know, about super nuts and bolts things about, I know one of them is, you know, some design elements that Ted Curran's going to put on the table, to, you know, much bigger picture type conversations from our keynote speakers and everything in between. So let's move on to, you know, we were going to talk about yesterday we had Herman Rojas on the eLearning hot seat. And, you know, we talked about on the eLearning hot seat about the future of education. And Herman, you know, painted a picture that was, you know, quite utopian if you think about it, where, you know, how is eLearning helping to accelerate the anytime, anywhere, you know, forever learning sort of life. Did you have any special takeaways, Chris, from that particular conversation?
Yeah. I don't know if this stirs a fire, but I see that there is a lot of humanism in the educational profession.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always wondered
what do you mean by humanism? I'm not sure I understand what that means.
I don't know, like general love for humanity, and just the how rewarding it is to work with students, with people, and help them overcome any challenge on an individual basis. And that's something that's almost a given as an educator, but is not that clearly present in the technology as a programmer, as a developer, or someone in those roles. And when I got to see Herman and listen to him and well interact with him over the past months, I see that there is humanity, but it feels like shy, like you see a teacher, and I say it because both my parents were teachers, and there is a pride that comes with that humanity, that humanism. Whereas in other fields, and as an economist, I was close to finance, people, and so on, and I see that there might be humanity, but it's shy. And I see a little bit of it, and it's interesting. But when you and Herman got to talk into things, you see that it's actually maybe shy, but it's really deep, and it moves along of his own goals and his own pursuits, I would say. About in particular, the relationship about his job with the future of humanity. As you said, utopian, idealistic it may sound, but it's it was very refreshing to hear it like that.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the utopian picture, right? I think it's actually, I used to joke about this a lot, that back in the day when cubicles were a super big thing, before everybody worked at home and worked remotely and whatnot, people would have these signs and these placards and these images or these posters and stuff they would put in their cubicles or their offices about, doing the right thing, and, how do you achieve, this, and how you're supposed to treat people. And I always find those fairly interesting, because at the end of the day, if we actually all did what those things, those placards said, it'd be a pretty good world. It'd be a pretty nice world, if we treated everybody with respect and dignity, and if we, always did what we'd say, and we apologize, and, et cetera, et cetera. So again, it's like Herman put that on the table, where we're finding ourselves when it comes to learning, and where learning fits in our life, and how learning, I love his vision about how learning and work are just starting to blend, right? Like learning is, and your ability to learn, and how you can learn, like the rapidity and the accessibility of learning within the workplace are becoming such differentiators in terms of your ability to be successful, and a company's ability to be successful. You can paint that picture of the future where education and how it's delivered, and what you provide in terms of from a work perspective, or the access to that learning, again, just really super interesting differentiators. So
yeah, I don't think he mentioned something that he wrote about a little bit in the community, which is the thing that we're seeing here, which is called An Unpredictable Future. And I think Herman is like a fan of aviation, or the aviation history. And after I saw the hot seat and take another look at this article, makes me think that there is a lot of humanity in the idea of human aviation, like in the industrial process of making something fly. It's so even though it's something very technical and cold, based on facts and so on, you do need this humanity. It works like an inspiration. It may not be exactly the same as what an educator feels like when they do their job, but I think it's there.
Very nice. I want to invite everybody to, give us a comment. I see there's a couple people watching us online, and in different places. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube right now. What you're listening to right now are something we call office hours. Chris and I are both managers and sort of hosts in what we call the eLearning community that's powered by a company called OpenLMS. You can go check us out over, I think it's at the bottom of your screen there, over at community.openlms.net, or you can go to eLearn Success Series .com/connect, and it will take you to the same place. We'd love to have everybody come. The community is free to join, and it's filled with literally thousands of people who are passionate about e-learning from every sort of walk from all around the globe and whatnot. So it's super, super exciting to be a part of the community and what we have to offer. The third part that the third thing we want to talk about is the magic of embeds. So embedding something into a learning management system, into a website, into an app. I'm pretty excited to hear what you have to say. I'm going to sit back and listen to you pontificate about this now. You wrote this post. But
no, it wasn't me.
Right, it wasn't you. It was, but anyway, take us away. Tell what's the magic of embeds mean to you?
Well, honestly, this is kind of too technical for me, but I'm trying to wrap up a lot of the contributions that we've seen on the community in the past couple of days. Mm-hmm. And this one is from Greg Burt, which is actually a very prolific contributor, which is also part of OpenLMS. But I tie it to a conversation that I have with Herman, actually. There is a bit of friction, a bit of tension at the beginning of me joining OpenLMS, because LMS Pulse loves plugins and loves themes, and those are very popular topics on lmspulse.com, like which new theme should I try, which new plugin is out there that I want to use it right away, and so on. But I did not realize that OpenLMS has a very careful process of whitelisting or plugins and themes and so on.
Approving, yeah, sure.
So a big, there's a big part of things that we encourage people to try out that OpenLMS clients may not have as readily available. So it was kind of disheartening until I spoke with Herman. And he basically said that we should stop thinking in terms of plugins for Moodle because we are arriving into an interoperable world. So interoperability is the key word. And plugins are just one example of interoperability. And they do have benefits, like they're more robust, more stable, and so on. But over time, other interoperability protocols are becoming much more dependable and much more reliable and much easier to connect to the point that you don't really need someone to approve you. Like if you're a teacher or even a student, you may not need like an administrator approval in your Moodle, in your OpenLMS website to just go ahead and run it. Herman, for example, he's bullish on the LTI.
Sure.
So there's tons of things that you can just connect into your Moodle site, and you can actually connect more than one thing, so you can create something really great. And I think that's really exciting. But I think the switch for me just clicked very recently, and I think it's just going that way in many people. But when I saw this post by Greg, I saw that, hey, there's something about interoperability here. And it is not a plugin, and it's not an LTI. It's much simpler than that, because it turns out that when the standard Moodle theme was built, it used a framework that's called the, oh my God, I'm forgetting it. It was built by Twitter, but it was released open source and is the basis for tons of websites.
Oh boy, now as soon as you said that, I know what you're talking about. Bootstrap.
Bootstrap, that's right, exactly. So Moodle is actually, the default theme of Moodle is based on Bootstrap, or at least one of the defaults. So whenever you use this little tool built by Greg himself, it takes advantage of some of the tools that are built into Moodle because it uses the Bootstrap framework. So basically what this does is a simple image embedder and attribution maker. So if you have a link from an image from any of these websites, it just makes it really easy to just put the image right there. You don't have to go to the usual process of finding the image, download it, then upload it to Moodle, then embed all this. You just paste the link, and it makes it all easier for you. And you can even add the attribution, which is also a very important thing that we should always keep into alert, the attribution, the
100%.
sourcing, and so on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't want to get into too much detail, but I do invite people to just give it a shot, especially because it doesn't matter what kind of Moodle or Moodle-based system you're using. It should be readily available to try
Super.
out. And it's just
And
another one of the cool things that came out from the community.
Yeah, no, that's a great. I'm really glad that you brought that up to share today. And I love the vision of the future of interoperability. Right. At the end of the day, it's hard for me to see a future where we won't have competing brands and sort of competing interests in terms of technologies. But more than once over the last several years, I've kind of chuckled with either friends or colleagues or something like that, where I use a particular device, that I'm connecting right now, but I use the software from somebody else, and so much of it's web-based already. So it's like really things are moving closer and closer to device or brand independent, right? Like everything just kind of works. Like when if you were to go to a website and say, oh, look, this video won't play on this one, you have to use a different browser. That website would die, a very quick death, right? So
or the browser.
What was that?
Or the browser can die too.
Yeah. Right. And so at the end of the day, so much functionality is becoming device independent that, you'd think the same with learning management systems, the same with any type of software. So that's really, I see that vision of the future very clearly. It'll be interesting to see how it's interesting. I wonder how much we'll see the convergence of like the physical world, right? Software makes sense, interoperability within software, but how much will that also converge in the hardware or the real world space? I don't have a really good sense of that.
Well, me neither, but I hate to talk about Meta and the metaverse, but it's there. And I just read that I wasn't really following that much the VR, like the hardware market, but it turns out that the last quarter, 75 of the headsets were sold by Oculus, which is Meta.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blown away because I thought there was this ecosystem, but no, it's like pretty much already consolidated. I think that when we talk about the metaverse, I wonder if it's going to be an interoperable metaverse, which I would hope it would be, or I think there will be a version of that metaverse which is interoperable, much like the open source exists out there. And then I hope, I hope we all collectively understand that it's important to keep supporting this decentralized but interconnected environment for VR or whatever new technology comes up in the future.
I'm going to have to see if Oculus owned that market, 75% market through the Oculus Quest. That was a really huge product. And the key thing about the Oculus Quest is that you don't have to have it connected to a bigger piece of hardware for it to run. So I don't know. I don't know that particular piece of research you're talking about, but that's interesting. Hey, listen, I want to tie it in a bow right there today. But I want to thank everybody for coming out and listening. If you're listening to the recording of this, please do come check us out. You can see at the bottom of the screen there, eLearn Success Series. It's a series of free, 4 free sessions. We're going to have a design session, an instructor session, an ed tech / data session, and an innovation session. One per quarter over the year here. Our first one here is on February 23rd. Come over and check out. We're going to be talking about instructional design, how to create engaging and effective courses. We have some great. You see Michelle Ockers there, Dr. Jane Bozarth, 2 of our keynote and our featured speaker, and then several others that are going to be adding some really, really cool value. And we're also going to be gathering in our community, community.openlms.net, or you can see elearnsuccessseries.com/connect. Both of these things are free for you to join. If you're passionate about e-learning, if you think e-learning is just cool, or you want to learn something about e-learning, come over and join us. We're happy to answer your questions. Chris, thank you again for being a part of our office hours this week, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks to you, Lek, and thank you, everyone. See you around.
Have a nice week. Ciao.